Good morning, class 12 students. This is the third part of the chapter, the third level. So, before we proceed with the remaining portion of the chapter, let's discuss the portion we covered in the last two videos. Okay, as you're aware, the story, the third level, it explores the science fiction genre of time travel. Yes, we do see the element of time travel, like you must have seen in the movies, like actors, hero and heroines, they are in some movies, action movies, they are able to to travel into space, either in the past or in the future. So you will see the main character of the story, Charlie, who happens to be 13-year-old. He also experiences this time travel, but it is all his imagination and his hallucination, because the story also explores the theme of escapism. Because in today's world, we human beings are so frustrated, we are so tired of our monotonous life, that all we want is an escape plan, or we look for a gateway to happiness. Because it is very common for us to experience a craving for peace and serenity, and that can clearly be seen through the character Charlie. How that this chapter begin. The third level, written by Jack Finney. It is about Charlie's wish to escape from the harsh realities of his present life. Uh, One day, when he was on his way to his home, his residence, he come across this third level of the Grand Central Station. But I think you are already aware that the Grand Central Station of New York has only two level. But the main character, the protagonist of the chapter, Charlie, he claims that he has been to the third level of the Grand Central Station, which is practically impossible. It is just his imagination, his hallucination. So on the way to his home from his office, he comes across the third level of the Grand Central Station, which actually does not exist, right? And he then he recalls his whole experience with his friend Sam, who happens to be a psychiatrist. So what was his explanation? Sam says that it is actually Charlie's a walking dream wish fulfillment, as written in the chapter, because Charlie hallucinated time travel to somewhere in 1894. And why 1894? Because 1894, it is a place before World War First and Second, and the war and aftermath of war always leave a bad impact on us, right? That is why Charlie wants to go back to a place which have not witnessed World War, the two terrible wars, right? A time before the World War. So he realizes that he has time traveled, and so he decides that he will buy tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. You have to remember the name of the place. It is Galesburg, Illinois, in United States, and this is where he wants to go. And why Galesburg, Illinois? Because Galesburg, Illinois is a very beautiful place, uh, where the house, they are built in old architecture. You could actually see the huge trees whose branches meet overhead. It is kind of like a, it is kind of groove. And what do people do in the evening? The evenings are very long. They sit outside in their lawn, they talk and they smoke cigar. They enjoy the peaceful and this serenity. That is why Charlie wants to go back to Galesburg, Illinois, uh, before before war, right? Uh, okay, so the next day he comes back. Okay, let me just also remind you that how did he come to realize that he was in the Grand Central Station? Because he reached the third level of the Grand Central Station, New York. Uh, he comes across a corridor, because Grand Central Station, it is a very huge station. It has two level, first level and second level. First level, for in the first level you get trains for cities and all, and in the second level you get train for rural areas. And because it is very huge, so Charlie, it is very common for Charlie to bump into a new corridor. And on that day too, when he was on the way to his home, and he was already late, he comes across a corridor. The corridors was empty, he was the only one. So he followed the path, and he came to know that there was an opening, and he reached there. And he came to a place, and he thought he was back. He came back into the second level, but the very moment when he started experiencing and observing things, he realized that he was in the third level of Grand Central Station, because he could see the wooden structure. There were fewer ticket windows, and everybody, women, men, they were wearing old-fashioned clothes, and even men have handlebar mustache, mutton sleeves protectors, old-fashioned clothes. And just to make sure, he came across a newsboy, and this is where he looked. He had a glance over the newspaper named The World. And the newspaper talks about the headlines. It was about President Cleveland, and the date was 1894. And that and also the locomotive engines, and there were open gas flame lights. There were no electricity. And this is when he found out the date, he realized that he was in the third level of Grand Central Station. He was in 19th century, a place where he has always wanted to go, his dream place. So he decided that he would take ticket. He would buy two tickets, one for him, one for he would buy it for himself, and the another one for his wife Louisa, and then they both would be able to go to Galesburg, Illinois of 1894. But unfortunately, the currency he had belonged to the current time, so he could not get the ticket. And also, the currency also posed a threat to him, because the clerk, the administrator who was there to offer his services for the ticket, thought Charlie was trying to deceive him. So Charlie backed, because in 1894 the prison are like the way it is in the current year. So the next day, so he left the third level of station. He withdraw so now he's back in the current time. He withdraw his savings, and he bought old currencies. uh, he bought old currencies, and he started looking for the third level of the stations. Now it's time for us to cover the remaining portion of this chapter. So as usual, I will highlight the paragraph first, and then I will explain the paragraph for you. So please make sure you pay attention to the paragraph, or make sure you keep your book handy. uh, but I've never again found the corridor that leads to the third level at Grand Central Station, although I have tried often enough. So the next day, Charlie, he could not find uh, the corridor that that led him to the third level of Grand Central Station, irrespective of the fact that he tried very hard. Louisa is Charlie's wife. She was pretty worried when I told her all this, and I didn't want me to look for the third level anymore. And after a while, I stopped. So this worried Louisa, because Charlie was consistently looking for the third level of Grand Central Station, which does not exist. And Louisa thought that Charlie was looking for things that actually doesn't exist. So this worried her. And she tried to stop her, and he stopped. I went back to my stems. Means this is also a means of distraction, because you're aware that this character Charlie, he is very unhappy with his life, or monotonous life, and his relationship with his wife, because uh, there must be a dispute between his wife and Charlie. So that's why he's looking for an escape. He's looking for a, you know, that is why he's hallucinating and imagining things that actually do not exist. Things do not exist. uh, but now we are both looking every weekend, because now we have proved that third level is still there. So this particular line, it is very unusual, because in these three lines, he says that now Charlie's wife and Charlie, they are both looking for the third level of station. But why? How come Louisa has started believing him? And he clarifies that my friend Sam, you remember Sam is a psychiatrist. It is Charlie's friend, whom Charlie met him in the beginning of the chapter, and he discussed about the third level with his friend. But according to Sam, it was a walking dream fulfillment. It was his hallucination and imagination. But now in this paragraph, he says that now we have approved that third level exists, because his friend Sam disappeared. His friend, the psychiatrist friend, he disappeared. And where did he disappear? Let's find out. Nobody knew where, but I sort of suspected, because Sam's a city boy and I used to tell him about Galesburg. So he clarifies that Sam is also not happy with city life, and he has always craved for a place like Galesburg, Illinois. I have already explained why this Galesburg is so famous and why Charlie craves for it, right? I went to school there. Charlie went to school there in Galesburg, and he always said he liked the sound of the place, and that's where he's all right in 1984. And Sam also admires Galesburg, because when he came to know about the beauty and the peaceful atmosphere of the place. So he says that Sam is in 1894, but how is he in 1894? Let's find out. Because one night, fussing with my stem collection, I found, well, do you know what a first day cover is? Fussing means when you make unnecessary movement with something, right? So one night when he was looking through his stem collection, because Charlie has this habit of collecting stems. It is also a means of distraction from the reality. So while going through his stamp collection, he came across this, and it is called first day cover. So before we proceed, we actually need to know what first day covers are. First day covers is actually, when a new stamp is, let me just highlight first. When a new stamp is issued, stamp collectors buy some and use them to mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of sale, and the postmark proves the date. The envelope is called first day cover. They are never opened. You just put a blank paper in the envelope. That is why they are not open. So actually, when a new stamp is issued, the people who have a habit of collecting stamps, they buy some of them, and they use the same stamp to mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of the sale. And also the postmark of that stamp proves the date. These envelopes are called first day cover, because they are never open, and the stamp collectors, they just simply put a blank paper in it. That night, and you are aware that Charlie's grandfather has a very good collection of first day covers, magazine and stamps. That night, among my oldest first day covers, I found one that shouldn't have been there. But there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to my grandfather at his home in Galesburg. That is what the address on the envelope said. And it had been there since July 1894. The postmark showed that, yet I did not remember it at all. The stamp was a 6-cent dull brown with a picture of President Garfield. He's a president of the United States. You can find more about him in Google. Naturally, when the envelope came to Granddad in the mail, it went right into his collection and stayed there till I took it out and opened it. The paper inside wasn't blank. So in this paragraph, he talks about an envelope the envelope happens to be the first day cover. And so it is supposed to be the paper inside, in it, was supposed to be blank, but it wasn't. Understand? So what happened, among his oldest first day covers, he found an envelope, and that it should not have been there, but it was there, because somebody had mailed it to Charlie's grandfather at his home in Galesburg, and the address on the envelope said that it had been there since July 1894. And the stamp was a 6 cent. It was dull brown, and it has a picture of President Garfield, which means that envelope came to Charlie's granddad collection, right? And it stayed there. So Charlie opened it in order to find out, and he saw that envelope was not empty, and it was actually a letter. You can see this is the letter. This is this is what he finds in the envelope, the first day cover. Let's read out. 1941 Willard Street, Galesburg, Illinois, July 1894. This is sender's address, and the letter is referred to Charlie. Charlie, I got to wishing that you were right, then I got to believing you were right, and Charlie, it is true, I found the third level. I have been here 2 weeks, and right now, down the street at the Dales, someone is playing a piano, and they're all out of the front porch singing. Seeing Nellie home, and I'm invited over for lemon day. Come back, Charlie and Louisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It is worth it, believe me. So, this letter talked about that the writer wished his third level story to be true. And, he says that actually whatever he believed is true. Because Sam has found the third level, and he has been there for 2 weeks, and he further he describes the place, and he describes the place is very beautiful. The people, they sit together, they sing, and he has been invited over over lemon day, and now he wants Charlie and Louisa to look for the third level and come back. So this is kind of a mystery here, that it is actually exciting, as that how Charlie, who happens to be a psychiatrist, how did he end up Galesburg, Illinois, or in 18th-19th century? Or is it Charlie's hallucination and imagination again, or is it Charlie who himself wrote this letter and used one of his grandfather's collection and posted to himself? Let's find out. At that stamp and coin store, and also you have to remember that Sam is also a city boy, and he also wants to explore this rural life, and Galesburg, Illinois of 1894. At the stamp and coin store I found out that Sam bought $800 worth of old style currency that ought to set him up in a nice little lay. Here is a nice little lay, means to have a business. Feed and grain business. Little hay feed. Sorry, it's hay. Let me just correct myself. That ought to set him up in a nice little hay feed and grain business. He always said that's what he really wished he could do, and he certainly can't go back to his old business. Not in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894. His old business. Why, Sam was my psychiatrist. So, the letter we just read, it's signed off as Sam. And the next day, Charlie finds out from the coin store, which is a nearby store, that he used to visit. Sam used to visit, and he finds out that Sam has bought old currency worth $800, which he is going to utilize in a hay, feed and grain business. And this is what he has always wished to do. So, and he could not go back to his old business, because nobody needs a psychiatrist in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894, right? So obviously he needs to look for this hay and feed and grain business. So that's how the story ends. The story ends at a very mysterious note, because where Charlie is wondering that Sam is psychiatrist or not. So it is a very mysterious end. So the possibility could be, what could be the possibility? Either Charlie wrote this letter to himself, or Sam himself wrote this letter to Charlie, because Sam is also frustrated with the monotonous life, and he also wanted this escapism. So this is where the chapter, our chapter ends here. And please do remember the theme of the chapter. It's very simple. The theme is, it is actually, it explores the science fiction genre of time travel, and also the story explores the theme of escapism as a psychological refuge from the harsh realities of the modern world. So that's where our chapter ends here, and these are the question answers. In the fourth part of this chapter, we will be discussing the summary and the question answer of textual question answers of this chapter. So that's all for today. Please make sure you watch this video thoroughly, positively, and carefully, and listen to each and every word. In case you have any confusion, you can approach me, you know how. And please look for the homework and do it positively. I want each and every one of you to complete your homework. Thank you, everyone. In the next class, we'll discuss the textual question answers, and once again the summary, the brief summary of the chapter. Thank you, everyone.